Hi, I'm Doug DeYoung, and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's mostly just home videos of my kid and some games that I like to play and various other things that you probably wouldn't find very interesting. But I wanted to make a video. I've been wanting to make a video for a long time about photography, and I watch a lot of content on YouTube about photography, and more so lately because I have been interested in buying a new camera, and I finally did buy a new camera. And so YouTube's super helpful for that sort of thing. I watch probably the same people that you do if you're watching this video, which is just like all the big YouTube names or whatever. And I like some better than others, and I feel like some people know more about what they're talking about. Some people are much better about gear, and other people are sort of more like real artists who maybe know less about gear, more about how to actually take a picture or compose a picture. And so I don't know exactly what I want to talk about. I've just been thinking about photography a lot lately, and I am a photographer. I've done professional photography. Mostly I've done professional video, but I haven't done either a lot. Like mostly I'm shooting for myself, and I prefer it that way. Like when I have branched out and done professional stuff, I haven't enjoyed it. I really didn't enjoy the professional video that I did, and it's not because it was hard necessarily. I think it was more just because it was stressful, particularly video. I remember when I was shooting professional video, like I would see the professional photographers running around, and I would be so jealous because I was like, oh man, they get to do the fun job of taking the pictures, which I enjoy much more so. With video, like you're expected to capture the entire thing, the entire event. If you're shooting events, like mostly I did event stuff. I did some sort of like corporate-y type videos where you get to sort of work a little bit more at your own pace and stuff like that. But most of the video stuff I've done has been event video. And, you're expected to shoot the event, and everything. You need to get everything. It all needs to be in focus. And I was always sort of a one-man show. And so if I was doing multiple cameras, I was always in the back of my mind, I was always like, oh, somebody bumped my tripod on my wide shot or whatever, is it really recording? Look back over my shoulder, make sure the red light is on, in the back of the room or whatever. And it's just so stressful. And sometimes you get home and the exposure maybe wasn't quite right on one of the cameras, and you got to match all the shots and blah, 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 blah. Whereas photography, you get home and it's almost like opening a Christmas present or something. Like you pull the files into your raw editor and see what you got. And if you're a good photographer, usually, there are some really great sort of magical shots in there, and you feel rewarded and excited to sort of deliver them to your customer. Whereas with video, I feel like if I messed up even part of the total video, even if the rest of the video looks great, I would always feel a little bit guilty or something, and I always hated feeling that way. I feel good about the content that I created, but I never felt good while doing it. And even directly afterward, I always feel like, so anyway, I don't know. I've gone down a rabbit trail here, but I just want to talk more specifically just about the philosophy of photography, my thoughts about it, and sort of how I'm sort of maturing with photography. I went to art school, and so I learned a lot about like what art is and what art kind of isn't, and then that's kind of nebulous. But in art school, like I also learned like what's hard and what's easy, like what's difficult and what's easy to do, and what makes something art and what makes something more interesting artistically. And I feel like, as far as photography, I started doing photography in art school, and I was shooting film. So I was shooting black and white, 35 millimeter on a Canon AE1, working in the darkroom. and I was shooting on just a 50 mil, 1.4, everything, and a 50 mil 1.4, just manual everything, obviously, and an AE1. And man, I enjoyed the crap out of that, but I didn't know what I was doing. Totally learning as I went. Didn't know anything about composition. Basically I just run up to something I thought was interesting looking, get the camera out, make sure my exposure was right, focus on the thing that I found interesting, and just shoot. That was as far as it went for me. And I accidentally got several good photographs that way, and I really enjoyed darkroom work. All the dodging and burning and contrast filters and masking, and just like the enlarger and just all the photo development chemicals. And I just really enjoyed that, and I still have hundreds of prints that I made that way. And I wish I had access to a big darkroom like that I had, because I went to UT and they had a really badass darkroom there, and spent more time in the darkroom probably than I did taking the pictures. I see there's a cloud going over. That'll be interesting to see how my exposure changes. I'm shooting this on my new camera. It's A7 III, and using a HLG hybrid log gamma, and I'm shooting. So I basically got my window half open here, and I got my white balance on daylight, but I've shifted, the color cast a little bit away from orange and magenta and toward blue a little bit, because I didn't like the orangey skin tones I was getting. And I'll show you like a pre and post grade of this so you can see what you think about that. I've got the ISO on auto, so we'll see how it handles, how the auto exposure handles the clouds going over. That should be interesting. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Really enjoyed film, just shooting on the 50 mil, and I didn't even really pay that much attention. Like, I was using aperture and shutter to get my exposure right. I wasn't thinking that hard about depth of field, what was in focus, what was out of focus, as much, like how much of my shot was in focus. And like there was for a while there, I didn't even think about that at all. And then I got my first digital camera. And with digital cameras, especially with the newer digital cameras with live view, and when I'm talking about newer, I'm talking about, like, I think my first camera was like a Canon Rebel. I don't even remember which one it was. It was like a 10.2 megapixel crop sensor Canon Rebel, and I had like a 50 mil for that, so that was tight on a crop sensor. That was like 80 something, 35 millimeter equivalent. And then I also had the kit lens, the 18 to 35, 3.5 to 5.6, and it's sort of a crappy lens, but I did a ton of shooting with it. But you can throw it in live view and sort of get a feel for like what the depth of field is going to be like and stuff, like think more about the composition and the depth of field in real time. And so of course modern cameras, especially mirrorless cameras, you really get to see what your picture is going to look like afterward. And so I stuck with Canon for a long time, and I really liked the results I was getting. Shot a ton of video on Canon, lots of photos with Canon. And I'm gonna just make sure I am indeed recording. A7 III, you can't see if you're recording or not. You can't look at your composition. So, I'm not going to do a lot of this kind of bloggy stuff, probably. Vlog, I guess. So, it's going to be fine for that, I think. But, anyway, so, started to really and I think the other thing is that the more pictures you take, the more you realize what you like. Like, I think that photography, for the most part, is a learned skill, and I think that anybody could learn it. It's just a time commitment. You got to take a ton of pictures, and so if you just take pictures and you just have to be that guy with the camera that everybody hates, no one likes having a camera pointed at them, and so you just have to sort of be that guy. You have to like photography enough to be that guy long enough and consistently enough to work through enough photographs to start forming an opinion of like what's good and what's not. And so I just took so many photographs, so many pictures, just tons and tons, just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, filling up terabytes of hard drives, you know. And I always shoot in RAW because I love the darkroom. And, you know, you don't get the darkroom with digital files, but the closest thing you do is you can work in your RAW editor and, you know, really fiddle around with them. And I hate to lose information. I feel like that's more the artistic process is like you, the photographer, decide what to throw out. Because you're always losing information at every step. You know, every time you crush the blacks or you bring up the highlights or you change the contrast or you add film grain or you change the colors, you're deciding what information to throw out. Or especially if you're shooting shallow depth of field. Shallow depth of field, the out of focus areas, that's information that's gone. You know, small sensor cameras, wide angle lenses, camera phones, phone cameras, you're actually capturing much more information about the real world than you are with a large sensor camera, generally speaking, because you as the artist, as a photographer, are deciding what to throw away. And with depth of field, you're doing it in real time. Those out of focus areas are never coming back. It's just gone forever. And so it's funny to me, and I guess not so funny to me after going to art school, to think that the pictures that people prefer are the ones with sort of the least information to tell you. Now, that's not necessarily the case, but many times it's the case that the one where the subject is isolated, where the artist has told you where to look. They're saying, look at this spot. This is the only bit that's in focus. You must look here. And so those are the ones that people prefer, whereas the deep field stuff, where everything's in focus, it's very difficult, and I'm going to get back to this, it's very difficult to take a picture like that and have people enjoy it, because usually your eye sort of like moves around the frame, and you don't know what to look at, and other sharply in focus things are sort of like pulling your eye away. Now, I kind of want to talk about this. So for the longest time, I thought, man, shallow depth of field, that's what's fun. That's why large sensor cameras are cool. You get to pick what's in focus. You can blow everything else out of focus. And to top it off, the bokeh, if you do it right, you have a nice lens, is beautiful, but not distracting. And that's awesome. And so I sort of went down the shallow depth of field path, you know, for a long time. But always in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking like, man, wide angle is so hard. You know, deep field is so hard. But every now and then I would see a wide angle shot or a deep field shot that somebody had really taken the time to compose, and I would think, man, that is a nice picture. I'd like to try that. And so every now and then I'd put a wide angle lens on my camera, I'd go out and shoot, and I would just think, man, this is just so difficult. It's so much more difficult. But I'd also think it's so much more kind of mature, a more mature type of technology. A more mature type of photography. These wide angle shots, you know, because they're more difficult, potentially more rewarding. But I would always go back to my like 50 mil 1.8, 50 mil 1.4, or my 85. And because I love portraits, I'm mostly a portrait photographer. Even when I do street photography, which I do a ton of, it's more like street portraits. Like I'm looking for a person to take a picture of. I want some context, you know, since I'm shooting street, but it doesn't have to be a ton of context, you know. Like mostly I want people to see a person in the frame. So because of that, I'm not doing as much architectural, although I do some. Occasionally I do some architectural. So I kept going back to that, but every now and then I would listen to a podcast or I'd watch a video where somebody would be talking about street photography, and I would watch this video of this guy and he was just talking about, oh yeah, I use a 28 millimeter lens and I just stop it down to f8, you know, and I just basically, you know, I turn my autofocus off and set my focus to just infinity focus, and everything, you know, farther away from me than like 4 or 5 feet is all in focus. And so he's just composing everything for deep field focus. And his shots are very interesting. Like, he's composing the foreground with the background, knowing everything is going to be in focus, and he's trying to place the people in his street photography in these different places. Anyway, so going back to art school, I think there's an analog or a parallel to be drawn here, which is I always looked at the abstract artists, the people who did really just wild abstract stuff, and I always thought, that's more difficult to do right. That's a more mature sort of piece of art, and because I do portraits. I'm still an artist, I do, maybe I'll put some pictures in this video, edit some portraits that I've done there. Like, I'm pretty good, not to be conceited or anything, but like, I can do like a charcoal or a pen and ink portrait. I feel like anybody could learn to do that if they really had to, just like anybody could learn photography if they really had to. But to do abstract photography, to do abstract art, I'm not sure if everybody could do that. I think that's like a more mature, more artistic, ultimately more difficult artistic style. And I always wanted to do more of that, and I always found it more challenging. And so I feel like wide angle, deep field photography is the same. I'm starting to feel like, after doing photographies for so many years, that anybody could slap an 85mm 1.8, 1.4 lens on a full frame camera and go out and shoot head and shoulders portraits and get blown out out of focus backgrounds. And modern cameras have no trouble focusing on people's eyes. You just look for decent light and go out and take portraits. I think anybody could do that. And I like doing that as much as anybody. And you get some beautiful looking pictures that way. But it's just too easy. It's just too formulaic. Whereas the real art, I feel like I see coming from wide angle. More wide angle. Like, I'm talking about like 28mm, 24mm, 35, is sort of borderline, but I think 28 and 24. And so all of this is coming back around to my main point, I think, of this video, or at least the main point that I'm trying to think about with this, which is I'm thinking about getting like a really nice 24mm 1.4 lens, and it's expensive. It's so expensive. And I have a 28 f2 that I like pretty well, but it's just not, like, at f2 it's acceptably sharp, but it's just not, it doesn't have that pop. And I feel like if I'm really going to spend some time diving into wide angle, sort of deeper field photography, I really want a lens that's special, something that I can print big, something that I'm going to be happy with at 100%, 1:1 pixel crop, something that's just going to be nice. And so I'm trying to decide whether I want to drop the money on a lens like that. And so I don't know. We'll see. I'm probably going to go out and shoot tonight at the golden hour. Maybe I'll take my 28 out. Maybe I'll take my 50. Maybe I'll take both. I don't know. But I'm going to go out, walk around in the city and take some pictures. But hopefully through this video, if I'm not feeling lazy, I'm going to edit in some of my street photography so that you guys can see that I'm not just bullshitting you. Like, I actually do go out and shoot quite a bit. I have taken some good pictures. At least I feel like they're good. I've certainly taken a lot of pictures, many, many thousands of pictures, and I've edited many thousands of pictures. And so, I'm starting to form an opinion. But anyway, I feel like I'm reaching a turning point here, where things are going to get different for me. I think. We'll see. So anyway, that's where I'm at with photography. I don't know if there'll be more videos like this or not, but if you took the time to watch this, comment, tell me how you feel about the art of photography, and what you think about my thoughts. Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye.